This week's channeled message from the angels is a super exciting one because they're talking about how we can work with these more powerful energies of manifestation that are around us already, that are around us now. And they're describing very specifically the new state of being we can use and embody now in order to work with this energy. Super cool message. So, welcome back to my channel, you guys. It is great to have you here. Thank you so much for joining. And for those of you who are new, welcome. My name is Ann Tucker. I am a trance channel, which means I go into a deep meditative state. And from that state, I raise my awareness up as high as I can go and a little higher, and I connect at the angelic realm. And then energies and healing comes through, and I share it here with you guys on YouTube. So, what they talk about in the message is that there is more energy in our reality. It's as if you imagine that previously our world had, say, like all the stuff around us had like 75% of like stuff and 25% like creative magic. Like now it's like 50% creative magic. Like there's more potency, there's more energy to work with. It comes back to us faster. So it's more of a conversation, more of a dialogue that we are working with, that we can learn to create with by being in our heart, by being more present. So, and they give us very, very specific, it's a very specific tools or very specific methods that we can learn to do it. So I think you guys are going to love the message. Here we go. They say, beginnings are upon you now. We celebrate the time to surrender. We celebrate you now. We invite you to become more of what you are. We invite yourselves to relinquish your hold on what was, to surrender the now, and to embrace yourselves. This next second, the next second of arriving, becomes more soulful, more ready, more potent. The next second you're experiencing is evolving. It is holding more power, more potency. It is ready for your greater understanding of divinity and yourself. It is holding the power and the potency of your ready expression. What is now is beginning in time. An expression of humanity not yet brought into being. In these times coming, in the next moment, your surrendering heart will yield for itself an open stance that invites a journey long foretold but never experienced. A second hopeful embrace of life in this instantiation, a new birth, an awareness of yourselves as being driven from home into a fold of what is now unfathomable, a new reality. What are these times on your horizon? How will they arrive? How will you experience them? They are openings before you now. A sense of yourself as having been loved forever. An empowering stance in dialogue with your circumstances, where all things in your purview are an unfoldment of feelings drawn from awareness. Where you feel yourself at length and in dialogue with all things surrounding yourself. That this life is an embrace worth understanding. These new expressions of how you are begin to come to mind, begin to expand and extend. The feelings of I am suffering, lack, and poverty seem to feel a distant shadow of overwhelm you can no longer recall. There is within your housing a readiness to embrace and surrender to this new light, to dialogue into this new frame. But your hesitancy to surrender to this freedom and its calling, you are not this. It feels as though the self cannot be and become what it is. In these points of transitioning overwhelming, as the spirit does soar back into the soul that is aching, we speak to you lovingly and coax you onward into the unfoldment, the new beginning. You ask us, is it near, this potency, this new formation? And we say, have no fear, it is opening around yourselves already. The instigation of this life and new way of being is accessible. The ways and means of becoming more of what is what you are, what is surrounding you now. Simply open your hearts more full, more ready to be of yourself. Lengthen the time in between the moments. Focus upon the second and feel in your soul and your depth what shall unfold. The unfoldment which you bring into reality is an extension of self as always. But in this new time now forming, the context you are in is more suggestive. The reality forms more readily. It comes as a dialogue of expression between yourself and your awareness, not just a subconscious gesture. It is the self that is wholly in the power of now. All your soul's context and reframing comes into expression. For this you are ready. You are ready for the circumstances of your own unfolding. There is doubt amongst you, doubt that this freedom will bring you harmony, doubt that you won't be perturbed by such extremism as you've been feeling, that all things around yourself will percolate and be as they are and have always been. We say in the time frames of your own experience, there will be an abundance of conflict remaining. There will be circumstances unfolding to which you would rather not belong. These we are well aware. And you are experiencing these hardships. How will it be that the next instantiation of self can become? Where does it become to? In what context or reality can you make way for what is peaceful, melodic, and harmonic in your own expression? We say make way, for the sun shines in all contexts. There is always light upon the earth, and you are this. The substance of what you are makes way from and through this earth. In this context, you are spinning your own freedom from the substance of what is drawn to you. This may differ from person to person, but feel that even in the context where suffering is present, your own energetic pulse creates a different tone of freedom. Sense that what is within you will pervade your own experience. See that within this earth many blessings can run concurrently. Your own field may diverge from the person next to you. Feel this difference in the knowing that all persons are met equally, with the opportunity to view themselves and their experience. See this not as injustice or inequality, but as a readiness to engage themselves in the context they are in. We wish to move from the context of suffering, from lack, from subservience. But in these times that are coming, this transfer of power from the few to the many is drawn out and lengthy. It takes place in the surges of contraction and release, and the great earth tumult will aid thee. There will be abundance. There will be those mired in it who shall have and hold on to more than their share. And we say the times that are coming will let loose the dialogues of understanding, where many shall come to partake, and shall take on in their hardship a more endearing position. The transfer has begun. The sensation of all are for each other, and all beget into one another, a truth of no separation. And in this context, none shall remain in the hardship of suffering. However, stillness does calm the pulse of your own body, the context of your heart and its contents. And thus, even while you carry one another through this journey, there is amongst yourselves differentiation. There is hardship in its distilled form, a sense of yourself as being encountered. These variations amongst yourselves will be allowed as an expression of harmonious interplay, of understanding within friendship with yourself. It is a conversation that has been lacking and often misunderstood. And here you have unfolding a greater dialogue and opportunity to be as one with each other in the unfoldment of humanity's graceful expression on earth. All right. I just had to give you guys a second to let that soak in. So, like I said, I was super excited for this message because I think I feel like they're getting much more specific here about we've been talking about like how the now is changing, how manifesting is changing, how we're responding differently. This concept of living in the now, like why is it so important to live in the now? They've given us several messages now about how we have to be present in the now, create in the now. Like if we're using our head, we're creating from the past, right? Based on knowledge that we gained in the past, knowledge that's based on the past, on past trends, past learning. That the idea that we have to manifest through the heart, we have to live in the heart and decide, make choices through the heart, living in the present moment, reacting to the context of where we are now. So they've been giving us like piece by piece by piece, giving us all these different pieces of like, this is the new way that we are going to be. And that we have this open to us right now, that it's almost like, okay, they're saying, okay, the energy is there. Now it's time to start learning to work with it. And they're saying it's not like there's stuff coming down the pipe, like this big flash, right? That shifts people. Like there's things coming that will move humanity and make this process easier. But they're saying now is the time to practice. They're saying like, hey, start doing it now, which is really, really cool. And so we go to the comments. You're saying, good morning, good timing. Welcome, John. You're saying, Rebecca says, not an injustice or inequality. That is amazing. Yeah, totally. A time of reciprocity is on its way. Yes. And if he said, for me, it's the holistic whole. Yes, that's right. Yeah. So I went through and I kind of wrote, because I feel like this is a really important one for us to kind of just grasp it. You know what I mean? Because I feel like they're giving us, like, this is specific. Like, this is how we're supposed to be in terms of how to work with this energy in the best way. So I wrote like a little synopsis of every paragraph. So as I go through every paragraph, I'll kind of say, okay, this is what this paragraph means. And then we'll read the paragraph and then we'll pull apart any pieces. Sound good? Okay. All right. So let's go. And the first paragraph is pretty straightforward. They say, beginnings are upon you now. We celebrate the time to surrender. We celebrate you now. We invite you to become more of what you are. We invite yourselves to relinquish your hold on what was, to surrender to the now and embrace yourselves. So I think if you just took this first paragraph as like an encapsulation of like their major messages from the last many, many weeks, you would be spot on. So they're saying, okay, they've been saying that we are at the door, like we're at the threshold. These are the beginnings. We're here. They keep talking about this as like a new birth, like humanity's next phase of existence. So they're saying it again here. Beginnings are upon you. Like we're in it, right? The opportunity to change how we are in the world is here now. And that doesn't mean we're going to be in it 100%. It's like we can start experimenting with learning how to be in this new way. And we might not hold it all the time, but we can try to hold it more, right? So beginnings are upon you now. Super cool. We celebrate the time to surrender. So how long have they been telling us to surrender, right? To surrender, like that idea to allow and to not hang on to, like the biggest thing they said several weeks ago was to not get sucked into the experience of loss. Like that if loss happens, to not let it overwhelm you, to not try desperately to try to bring back what was, to recognize that whatever we lose, that is purposeful, and that whatever's coming, it is creating space for the new, right? Whatever we're losing in these times is making space for the new. And so we need to and I know that some of you, like right now, we're talking about people being sick, and then some of you have had personal loss of loved ones. And I know that is such a challenge. I mean, that's like a challenge is like such an understatement. There's really no words to really do justice to grief, right? To grief and loss. But I think in there, it is that sensation of how do we understand the context of that type of a loss as something that is making space for you moving forward. One of the ways, and I was just talking about this with someone just the other day who lost a dear friend, it really in a horrific way. And we were talking about how the angels told me once that losing someone, that the grief you experience, it's almost as if when someone crosses over, they get to pick who feels the grief, right? It's like a gift they get to give. And the grief is a method by which we expand our hearts, right? When we feel the grief because we feel the love. And it's expansive. It expands your heart. So it's like a gift. And it feels, and as they were telling me this, it was like I was aware of, like, it felt like such an honor to be given the grief. You know, it felt like it was such a blessing to be given the grief, because it's through that sorrow that we recognize how much we love. So it was a beautiful thought, beautiful thought. So that in that sense, that loss is making way for the expansion of your heart, which is amazing. So so they're talking about surrender. They say, we celebrate you now. And we invite you to become more of what you are. So this is that experience as we're moving into this. We are trying to become more balanced in our energy between our masculine and feminine energy, which we all have, both masculine and feminine energy. We're trying to balance that so we can connect more fully to our higher self, draw in more of ourself into the present moment. This is our goal, right? We're celebrating ourselves. We're fully accepting ourselves, allowing all of us in. And in that place, so we're trying to become more of that. They say, we invite yourselves to relinquish your hold on what was. This is that idea of surrendering to the now, to embrace yourselves. So this is like an encapsulation in a paragraph of like their major messages, the major themes that they've been talking about. And so it's kind of like, okay, this is where we were. This is what we've been talking about. Here is where we are now. And I think my YouTube is buffering, so sorry about that. Sorry if that happened. And you're saying, let's see here. And you're saying, bringing a corrupt memory from the past to project into the future from the present is no longer the way forward anymore for me. That is great. And that's exactly what they're asking us to do. You're saying, wow, what an amazing way to hold grief. Yeah, it did. It was really, to me, it just completely shifted how I think about it. It turns it into like a really beautiful, loving thing, amazing thing. And it feels like a connection between us and the other side, which I love. All right. So now we go into the meat of this message, and they say the second paragraph is saying that there is more creative power that's available to us right now. So that's the main theme of this paragraph. And they say the next second arriving becomes more soulful, more ready, more potent. The next second you're experiencing is evolving. It is holding more power, more potency. It is ready for your greater understanding of divinity and yourself. It is holding the power and the potency of your ready expression. So this is that idea I was talking about in the beginning, that it's like our content, like what is making up the reality around us. If it has 25% of this magic creative essence, they're boosting it up to 50% magic, right? So now you have more potency, more power. So it's almost like you can create faster. You can create, and they've been talking about this, right? Instant manifestation, all that kind of stuff. This is that idea that there's more energy. And I think it's that as we shift our vibration, we move to a higher frequency, it becomes easier for us to move through the world. It becomes easier for us to move matter. So this is that added potency. And so they're saying that, and so this is that next second arriving. So it's like moment by moment, the now is becoming, they say, more soulful. I love that, because it's like there's more spirit, there's more divinity, there's more creative power, right? Our soul is our creative essence. It's more soulful, more full of creative power, right? More ready, more potent. So awesome. And it is ready for our greater understanding of divinity and ourselves. So it's really about how do we work with this energy by being consciously present. And this is so critical. This is why I think they've been hammering on us through all these different voices, through, in all the different spiritual teachers in our world who've been talking about live in the now, live in the now. Like this is why, right? I think it is because by living in the now, this is how we learn how to work with this energy in a conscious way. Yeah. For ready expression. All right, so the next paragraph, we go into the third paragraph here. They say that this period we're going through is like a rebirth. That's the main theme of this paragraph. It's like a rebirth. So they say what is now is a beginning in time, an expression of humanity not yet brought into being. In these times coming, in the next moment, your surrendering heart will yield for itself an open stance that invites a journey long foretold but never experienced. So this is that idea that in order to work with this energy, we would need to be in the heart, not in the head, because the head lives in the past. The heart lives in the moment. So the heart lives in the now. The head is constantly trying to process, going through a process of comparison, comparing what is happening now to what happened before, trying to put things in buckets, trying to understand things through comparison, right? That's how the head works. The heart just feels. Feeling is now. It's very now based, which is why they want us in the heart. That is the open stance, open heart. That's what they're talking about here. And invites a journey that's a surrendering heart, right, will yield for itself an open stance. This is the critical piece for our growth, for our being able to work with this energy consistently. And know that when we talk about open heart, That's the thing that comes and goes, right? You can be walking through most of the day with your heart open and feeling amazing, and then something happens and all of a sudden fear and it contracts, right? So it's a chakra. It can open and close. So we know that. So that what I'm trying to say is we don't have to be perfect. We're just trying to work with this energy as much as we can, right? That we're trying to do the best we can with where we are right now. The more presence we have, the more awareness we have of how we're working with the energy, the faster we grow through it. We get much more immediate feedback from our reality now, so we can learn faster. And you're saying, that's brilliant. Thank you so much. Might you say a wifing of I'm not sure. Are you talking about the passing over, Rebecca? There, Mike says, how do we learn to conduct our own flow of change? Super interesting. And they give us a lot more detail in here. You're saying like a soulful renaissance. Yes, exactly. You're saying such a good description. The head is about comparing to make sense of things. The heart is in the moment. Yes. Yeah. And I think it really does help us to understand, like the head has a reason for being. We need the head. We just need to be in, especially as we're growing into this new way of being, we need to rely on the heart in order to navigate it. Otherwise we don't have any tools, right? In the moment, we have to have tools that work for the now, and the heart is the tool. The heart is the one we need for now, and the head then comes in behind the heart and says, great, okay, this is what you want, I'll tell you how to get it. The head then does its process of planning and scheming and figuring things out. All right, open stance that invites a journey long foretold but never experienced. A second, and this is that part, long foretold. So how long have we been talking about this shift in consciousness, right? It's been since like what, the 60s, the 70s. So that's what they're talking about here. And maybe even before that, like look at like the Mayan calendar, like it's been talked about in ancient traditions for the longest time. And in all of our religious texts, it's talked about long foretold, but never experienced. Yeah. A second hopeful embrace of life in this instantiation, a new birth. So this is saying it's a second. So it's like taking life again, but with more hope. It's a more hopeful experience, right? A new birth, an awareness of yourselves as being driven from home. So the home is like our safety spot. It's like where we want to keep things the same, right? Keep things the way we're familiar with. You're driven from home into a fold of what is now unfathomable. A new reality. So, and they're saying, so this is not a small change, right? This is a major change because it's really about the structure of how we exist in our world. So, it's unfathomable because it's just, we've never experienced it. We've never known what it is. That's why they're trying so hard to give us as much as they can. It's a little bit like they say, is trying to talk about dancing. Right? Is that, how do you talk about dancing? Well, it's just easier to dance. You know what I mean? It's really hard to describe what it feels like to dance. But that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to explain to us what this is going to be like. It's unfathomable. They're doing their best. Yeah. And then Jay says, we definitely need the head. We do. We 100% need the head. So this is not a thing saying the head is done. No, we need the head. But the point is to let the heart decide and let the head fill in after the decision. The head tells us how to get there. Yeah, it tells us what to do. The heart tells us what to do. The head tells us how. How about that? That's better. All right. Next paragraph. This next paragraph is about that the open stance of the heart, that having an open heart is empowering. And then it's also about conscious creation is kind of the theme of this next paragraph. So it's telling us a little bit more about how we do it with this new, how do we work with this new energy? They say, what are these times on your horizon? How will they arrive? How will you experience them? They are openings before you now, a sense of yourself as having been loved forever, and empowering stance in dialogue with your circumstances, where all things in your purview are an unfoldment of feelings drawn from awareness, where you feel yourself at length and in dialogue with all things surrounding yourself. And this life is in embrace, an embrace worth undertaking. So to break this down a little bit more, so there's really saying, it's like, what is it going to be like? How are we going to experience it? So number one, a sense of ourselves as having been loved forever. So like, okay, yes, thank you. Right? Like that is so awesome. And it is that sense of belonging, unity. When we get to unity, then we feel seen, right? What we really want is that sense that people see us accurately. And I remember back, in my first marriage, which was a very, very lonely marriage, like we both had our hearts closed. We did not see each other in any way. And in that, I remember reading books and feeling so wistful that in the book, the main characters always understood, right, is always seen in the best light, seen for their best intentions. I think, of course, I was probably reading like Jane Austen or something because I love that. but it was always that sense that, wow, the heroine or the hero is always seen as doing the right thing because it's from their perspective, right? So they're always seen accurately because the narrator is writing their truth. It is about that person, seen from their perspective. But I think as we're moving into this new world, and I think at that time, I was just really craving to be seen and to be understood, right? To have it be a thing where whatever was in my heart was how somebody would see me, and feeling like that wasn't happening in my life, feeling like I was being seen as a projection of somebody else's hurts. And I think that's how a lot of us live in life, is people project their stuff on us. And we're like, that's not what I was saying at all. You know what I mean? Like, no, that's not what I'm feeling at all. But that's how it is when we're projecting. And they're saying in this new world, in this new way of being, as we start to really feel each other's truth, then we will have the sense of ourselves as being loved forever, because of the fact that we will feel truly seen. So how amazing is that? Like, we all get to be the hero or the heroine of the story, where it's told from our perspective, where we're really understood for, like, why do we do things? What is our motivation? Right? So cool. An empowering stance in dialogue with your circumstances. So this is, and I like that, empowering stance. And the empowering stance is open-heartedness in dialogue with your circumstances. So this is that idea. This is really trying to get us a sense of what this is going to feel like, that we are empowered, because imagine the stance. And I like that they say the word stance, because in the word stance, there's a sense of like, it is powerful, like the power pose of your hands on, you know what I mean? Like, this is the power pose and how it brings a certain energy. This is a stance. It's powerful. It's presence, right? It's bringing more of your potency into the moment. So your stance, powerful stance, empowering stance in dialogue with the current moment. So this is a conversation between your heart and your reality, where you are present to what's being said. And when you're present to what's being said, then what happens, right? Where all things in your purview, so everything you see, are an unfoldment of feelings drawn from awareness. So in other words, you are watching your reality, being aware of what's happening in dialogue with your heart. You're feeling in your heart, I am feeling elated today. And I'm watching how that elation is moving from me out into my world and playing out and bringing me things that reflect my elation back to me. Or I am feeling grief today, and I'm watching as my grief moves out of me and moves into my world, and it's showing me and reflecting me my grief. So imagine this, that right now we experience if we have feelings inside of us that are maybe self-critical or self-judgment or not positive or whatever, and then that immediately shows up in our world as some way that's like where the world is not kind to us because we're not being kind to ourselves. But what if instead, with this new way of being present, that when the world reflects back to us what we have on the inside, it feels more like being seen? Like, say you have grief in your heart because of something that you've lost, and that grief is then reflected into the world, and the world reflects back to you grief and says, I see your grief, right? And it becomes not a thing where you're living in karma, but it's like living in a place where you are deeply understood and reflected by the world around you, right? And then when you shift out of that, when you move into a space, an opening, right? Then that's reflected back to you. Like, it's just a really different reframing. It's a really different way of being in the world. And that's why I think they're just give us baby steps here, helping us to try to understand how different this is. So they're saying, it's an unfoldment of feelings drawn from your awareness. So we feel it, but we are conscious of the feeling. So this is the mind and the heart melded, right? This is our soul's presence, recognizing this dialogue that's happening between us and our reality. And they say where you feel yourself at length. So this is like it takes your feeling and it shows it back to you as if each feeling you have is important, right? You feel yourself at length, right? And in dialogue with all things surrounding yourself. So how amazing is that, right? What an amazing way to feel seen. So this life is an embrace worth understanding. Right? So amazing. It's hard to even wrap our heads around. Hard for me, hard for me to understand. Maybe it is for you too. So you're saying awareness from brain and heart is coherence. Yes. Mary says, but to take, and you say, for me, the heart is the gut, the head and the heart into the totality of the whole. you say. And then going on, Mary says, but to take the Jane Austen analogy a bit further, not only are we all going to be in our own story, but we will understand everyone else's story. Yes, and they will be understanding ours. We will all be protagonists. Yes, I think that is exactly it. That's what's is so exciting about this, to be in the world, but not of it. Interesting. Yeah. So it's almost like you're in relationship to the world as opposed to being buffeted around by the world, right? Yeah. Linda says, I love this, to be truly seen on the heart level. Yes, I totally agree. And I was really excited to share this one with you guys. I think it's a beautiful, like very exciting message. And the fact that we can start playing with this now is amazing. All right. They go on to say, this next paragraph is about, they're saying in this next paragraph, they say, we expand into this gradually. And that's the main thing, is that this is sort of a gradual expansion that we're going into. So the paragraph says, these new expressions of how you are begin to come to mind, begin to expand and extend. The feelings of I am suffering, lack, and poverty seem to feel a distant shadow of overwhelm, and you can no longer recall. There is within your housing a readiness to embrace and surrender to this new light, to dialogue into this new frame. So in other words, it's almost like, imagine that you've had a headache for a long time, and then when do you first become aware that the headache is gone? That it kind of creeps over you. It's like you're not paying attention to it, and you forget that it's there for a little bit, and all of a sudden you tune in and you're like, oh, my headache's gone, right? And I think that's kind of how this will unfold, is that maybe you're in a space right now where sometimes you feel like you're suffering. And then over time, things might shift, and you might all of a sudden realize, wait a minute, like those feelings I had don't exist anymore. Like I'm not feeling that heavy anymore. That suffering I was experiencing, it seems to be dissipating, right? It's a slow, gradual expansion into the energy. And so we have the opportunity to play with it, to work with it, to be conscious of it. Yeah. Next paragraph, they say, but your hesitancy to surrender. This next paragraph is basically saying we doubt ourselves if they're here to help us. They say, but your hesitancy to surrender to this freedom and its calling, you are not this. It feels as though the self cannot be and become what it is. So they're saying here, but for our hesitancy, like they're saying that we're ready for this, except that we feel hesitant to surrender to the freedom and its calling. We say to ourselves that we are not this, right? You are not this. It feels as though the self cannot be and become what it is. It just feels impossible, right? It feels like this is like such a stretch, like sci-fi, right? It feels so different. They go on to say, in these points of transition, overwhelming, as the spirit does soar back into the soul that is aching, we speak to you lovingly and coax you onward into the unfoldment, the new beginning. So this is really them saying like, wow, yeah, we might go through periods of doubt. We might be like, it's not working. I'm not feeling it. I'm not there yet. And they're saying in those moments of because the transition, they say, will be overwhelming at times. And I think that overwhelm can be because the reality around us is changing, our abilities are changing so much, but then also the overwhelm of the shift in society, like how society is changing and the chaos around us. So there's a lot of places where we might be like, okay, I'm not sure I'm cut out for this, but they're saying that through that whole time that they will be speaking to us, lovingly coaxing us, right? Bringing us onward into the unfoldment, into the new beginning. So they're not going to just let us suffer. They're going to be drawing us forward through this whole process. And suffering sometimes is the experience of our own resistance. So be aware of that the more that we can just give over and say, okay, just take me forward. I'm ready. I'm willing, help me, show me what I need to do. Right. Yeah. They go on to say, so this next paragraph is saying that we can start experiencing this now. So this is really cool. You ask us, is it near, this potency, this new formation? And we say, have no fear. It is opening around yourselves already. The instigation of this life and new way of being is accessible. The ways and means of becoming more of what you are is surrounding you now. Simply open your hearts more full, more ready to be of yourself. So this is it. This is the key. They're saying you can do it now. The key is through the heart. And that's what they've been trying to talk to us about living in the present moment, being in our heart and not in our head. This is the key. Yeah. And you're saying, are we there now? Like being in the back seat of the car. Exactly. Terry says, validating our fear and assuring us that we have their support if we surrender. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. All right, so the next paragraph is about how to do it. It's basically how to do it. It's a dialogue between your conscious feeling and your reality. So this is how they describe it. They say, this is the how-to. So lengthen the time in between the moments. Focus upon the next second and feel in your soul and your depth what shall unfold. The unfoldment which you bring into reality is an extension of self, as always. But in this new time now forming, the context you are in is more suggestive. The reality forms more readily. It comes as a dialogue of expression between yourself and your awareness, not just a subconscious gesture. So I think this is, in order to have a dialogue, it's two-way conversation. So what this means is that we can see a reaction from our reality more quickly. And some of us have been talking about this just recently, how we're having these weird, almost like an echo, where something happens to, like this has happened to me multiple times, where something happens and then it happens again later that day, almost like happening, my awareness being drawn to that thing once during the day, it then repeats itself later in the day. And I'm seeing things that I talk about, if I talk about it a little bit, then it shows up in my reality more, right? I'm working with this energy without even really being aware of it. That it's like by putting it out there verbally, because your thoughts make things, it then shows up in my reality. So like here is a very funny experience of this. So I have been talking with some of you, I've been talking to people about how sometimes back when I was first starting to channel, I would go into meditation, and several times I would go into meditation and then something would happen in the meditation at the beginning that seemed like a non sequitur. And then later during the day, that thing would show up in my life. And that thing was for several days in a row. And then again, later at different times, it was Poseidon. Right? And sometimes he would show up holding his trident. Sometimes it would be the conch shell and the trident. It would be like, okay, like here's Poseidon again. I always thought this is like a brain fart. Like, why am I seeing Poseidon? Like, what is this? And then I would go out into the world and I would run into a 10-foot tall statue of Poseidon right in front of the building I was going into, right? Or right on the side of the restaurant I was going into would be a 2-story foot tall painting of Poseidon. Like this just kept happening. So I was telling this story recently, talking about it with somebody, and then I'm in San Diego and I'm staying at a hotel, and then I just want to show you this because it's just too perfect if I can pull it up accurately. I'm almost there, you guys. Be patient with me because it's worth it. Here it is. So I am here, and then look at what is right next to me in the hotel. Literally in the parking lot outside of our room is a restaurant called Poseidon. It's right there. And so coincidence? Kinda, right? But it's also like I was just talking about how I kept creating it in my reality. And then here I created it in my reality. So that kind of thing is happening all the time. And they're saying, so this concept that it's more, the reality is more, they use the word suggestive, which is just this, right? It's suggestive. I suggested it because I was talking about it. I probably told the story 2 or 3 times because it just was coming up in conversation, and then boom, I suggested it and it showed up. You know what I mean? So cool, huh? And so they're saying, to break this down, they're saying, lengthen the time between the moments. How do we do that? By bringing our presence into the moment. So when you are aware, think about how you lose time when you're drifting off to la la land. Whereas, or when you're busy thinking about, what you just did or the past or worrying about the future, you're not present. The moment seems just, you lose it. Whereas when you're really conscious and present, think about how slow time goes when you're in a new place you've never been before, because you have to be really conscious. You can't just slip into your habits of driving to the same place. You have to really be aware, right? Time slows down. So they want us to be aware, living in the moment. That's how we lengthen the time in between the moments. We stretch the moments out by bringing awareness to them. All right, so that's the first step. Then they say focus upon the next second and feel in your soul and your depth what shall unfold. So this is that idea of being in the present moment, but not reacting to the moment, which is what we do now. Right now, when we're present, we stay in the state of observer. It's like, and by doing that, we're almost focusing on the moment that just passed. So when we're living in the present now, we're focusing on what is just now happening, just now as in it just passed, right? Instead, they want us to be focusing on the now, but on the other side of that equation, and the just almost now, in the very next moment, which is now, but it's in anticipation of the now. Does it make sense? So it's now, but it's almost like waiting for the now to come. So it's a slightly different perspective. It's not as much being the observer, it's being the participant and almost expecting a response back to you. So it's a different feeling. Everything's about the feeling, right? So focus upon the next second and feel in your soul and your depth what shall unfold. So it's almost like being conscious, being present and saying, what am I feeling right now? And then expecting that to show up in your reality. What's my current frame of mind and how am I reacting to the world right now? How do I feel? How am I perceiving the world right now? Am I in a good state? Am I feeling happy? Am I thinking wistfully? What am I thinking? How am I feeling? What's happening in here? And to be aware of that, and then to expect that to show up in your next now, right? And to be in dialogue, say, okay, now, show me, reflect back to me, show me you understand my heart, right? And this is the conversation. It's kind of mind-blowing. And you're saying no coincidence about the sign, right? I know, me too. It's so cool. And you're saying drifting off to La La Land is me. This sounds like Alan Watts. Alan Watts is super cool. I've listened to some of his stuff. He's very awesome. To be present with our presence is timeless for me. Yes, it's manifesting on turbo, I think. I think you're right. That is what this feels like. So feel into your soul of the depth of your what shall unfold. So it's really like you're going into it with the expectation that this is going to happen. It's not like, yeah, it's feeling it shall unfold. So understanding this is a dialogue and anticipating the dialogue. The unfoldment which you bring into reality is an extension of self as always. So we've always been creating our reality. But they say in this new time, now forming, the context you are in is more suggestive. So it's like I'm talking about with the sign, with Poseidon. The reality forms more readily. So this is why it becomes a conversation, is because it happens more easily. Right now, you may be creating unconsciously, and then you create something and it shows up 2 months from now. So it's really hard to have a dialogue. It's like snail mail, you know what I mean? It's like, but it's snail mail like, you know, in the olden days with like stagecoaches. When you send something off and it comes back 6 months later. It's hard to have a conversation like that. This is more responsive. So we get this more immediate feedback of what's going on in our reality, how it's reflecting us back to ourselves. So they're saying that the reality forms more readily. It comes as a dialogue of expression between yourself and your awareness, not just a subconscious gesture. So it's really us being present and aware of what we're feeling, aware of how we're relating to our world. So it is the self that is wholly in the power of now. So it's really that full embodying of who you are, trying to draw as much of yourself in. And when I say that, I'm really talking about trying to heal the wounds where we deny ourselves, where we judge ourselves, where we say this experience I had, I'm not going to look at that because I have shame about that, you know, or I feel guilty about that, right? All these pieces of ourselves that we deny. And it's allowing all of those back in. It's all the work we're doing in soul convergence, right? It's all about drawing all these aspects of ourselves in to connect to our heart, to balance our energies, to connect. This is exactly the energy. This is exactly what we're working on in soul convergence, which has been super exciting to see it happening. So it is the self that is wholly in the power of now. Right? All the soul's context and reframing comes into expressions. This is exactly what I was talking about. It's the context, everything we've experienced, trying to bring all of ourselves, every way that we resist who we are, the truth of who we are, the ways we resist that. We think it's not okay, it's not good enough, it's shameful, it's guilty, it's all the things, right? It's bringing all that in. Yeah. And you're saying, I feel like this message is kind of like a how-to manual, so appreciative. I know, I love this kind of thing where they get practical. I am a practical person, you know, I like this kind of stuff too. Yeah. And you're saying, I think it is also being aware of our own power and magic. Yes. Of previous lives and destinations. Yes, that's exactly what we're trying to heal, Mike. Yeah, totally. So, okay, so going on, the next paragraph is, again, they're coming back to our doubt. So they say, for this, you are ready. You are ready for the circumstances of your own unfolding. There is doubt amongst you. Doubt that this freedom will bring you harmony. Doubt that you won't be perturbed by such extremism as you've been feeling. That all things around yourself will percolate and be as they are and have always been. So this is that idea that like we are living in a world right now which is becoming increasingly chaotic. It's the poly crisis, as my daughter, she shared that term with me. But I love it. It's a great term because that is what we're experiencing. It's like every time you turn around, it's a new ridiculously crazy thing that it's just on the heels of the last ridiculous crazy thing that's horrific in this world, right? There's so much disaster going on. And so how do we live in that and then feel like, oh, everything's nice? Like, I'm creating rainbows and puppies, like how do we do that? And so they're saying doubt, we have doubt, and they're acknowledging it and saying like, look, we recognize this is not an easy shift to make. Like, you're living in this context of chaos. So here is how they explain that. They say, so they're saying, how can this work while chaos is around us? This is the theme of the next paragraph. They say, we say, in the time frames of your own experience, there will be an abundance of conflict remaining. So they're acknowledging, like we are the difficult times of this stress that we are going on, the pulling apart of the structures of our world is not done yet. So they're saying there will be an abundance of conflict remaining. So we know they've said we're going into more war. They've talked about that. They've said that in the middle of that war, like the U.S. falls apart. They've said that there will be the big earth rift. Like there's stuff coming, which will be chaotic, right? Conflict and chaos is coming. So what do? They say there will be circumstances unfolding to which you would rather not belong, that we really, would rather not feel. These we are well aware. As you are experiencing these hardships, how will it be that the next instantiation of self can become? Where does it become to? In what context or reality can you make way for what is peaceful, melodic, and harmonic in your own expression? So it's like, how do we do this? How do we feel and create into this new space where things are lovely, right? Trying to create from harmony, all this kind of stuff, while we're in this, we're living in all of this, right? What's around us. And here's what they say. We say, make way. We say, make way. For the sun shines in all contexts. There is always light upon the earth, and you are this. The substance of what you are makes way from and through this earth. In this context, you are spinning your own freedom from the substance of what is drawn to you. So they're saying that, and it makes sense, that no matter, there's always like basically when the sun shines, it lands equally everywhere, right? There is always light on the earth, and you are this. So no matter where you are, in any context that you are in, you are still the light. And that's their point. They're saying it doesn't matter that there's chaos. You are still this. And in this, you can be in the midst of chaos. And they're saying you are spinning your own freedom from the substance of what is drawn to you. So this really makes me think of this past weekend, right? Where like I said, my whole family was going through stuff this past weekend, like stuff. And I was on the beach. Like, I was in Happy Land. So so how did that happen? Well, I was spinning my own freedom, right? It just lined up that way. I had that trip planned for months, right? And it just worked out that happened to align with the weekend where if I had been home, it would have been very hard for me to stay in a space of peace, right? Stay in a space of harmony. So I was taken out of the situation and put into a place where I was feeling a lot of peace, and I did a lot of shopping. And I got this new sweater, hearts on my sleeve. How cute is that? So anyways, I had fun. So you're saying, let me just double check here and we'll go into the next paragraph. What you were saying. Let's see, so strange to see Alan Watts reference. Just saw something about that a few moments ago. Cool. Yeah, here we go, right? It's like replicating, like it just ripples. Yeah. And seeing things and then seeing them multiple times. This is part of working with this energy. I was thinking about his quote about the future is now. Yeah. So Lisa says, I heard someone say that they would no longer participate in the thieving of their joy. And I love that phrasing. It's easy to feel distraught with the polycrisis, but joy is from the heart and it's needed. I decided to adopt that as a new mantra when I am feeling joy is difficult. Yeah, I love it. And I think the thing is to recognize that it is okay to feel joy even when there is suffering in the world, that we are not meant to suffer. And they go into that in these next paragraphs about the fact that there will be others who suffer and that that's okay. It's not okay, we don't want them to suffer, but that it is okay for you to feel joy if someone else is suffering, because you can't control their experience, right? And when the sun shines, it shines everywhere. Love the sweater. Thank you. I loved it too. So, all right. So then they go on to say, in the next paragraph. So this next paragraph is about that they're saying that two different people can have a different experience of the same reality, right? And then they talk about what is coming in the near future is the next paragraph. So this is how they say it. They say this may differ from person to person, but feel that even in the context of where suffering is present, your own energetic pulse creates a different tone of freedom. Sense that what is within you will pervade your own experience. See that within this earth, many blessings can run concurrently. Your own field may diverge from the person next to you. Feel this difference in the knowing that all persons are met equally with the opportunity to view themselves and their experience. See this not as injustice or inequality, but as a readiness to engage themselves in the context they are in. So I think I really like this paragraph. So they're saying that this experience that we're having in terms of the degree that you are able to radiate into your reality and work with your reality and create like what is coming through you, what we experience of this polycrisis is going to differ from person to person. But feel that in the context where suffering is present, so you may be right next to suffering, but they say your own energetic pulse creates a different tone of freedom. And I love that they say a different tone of freedom, because what they're saying is that the person who is suffering is free to suffer, that they are creating a reality of suffering and they're free to do that. And you create a different tone of freedom, right? So this is wonderful. And be clear, they did say, is that coming up, that they said that they don't want suffering? I think that's coming up next, because that's important to know, because there is a thing in the world right now where there is genuine hardship, where there's constraints in our reality that make things extra hard, and those they're trying to do away with, but they go into that. So they're talking about in the future, right? In the future, in this new way of being, you can still have someone who is manifesting suffering for themselves, and you can be right next to them, right? But they are free. We have to respect their journey. So then they go on to say, sense that what is within you will pervade your own experience. So what you radiate is going to be, what's coming from your heart will pervade your experience. See that within this earth, many blessings can run concurrently. And I love that they say that. They're like, every experience is a blessing. It doesn't matter if we look at what somebody else is experiencing and say, man, I wouldn't want that. Like, no thanks for me. That person obviously is wanting to have that experience because that's what they're creating, right? Some part of them is wanting it. And so they're going to create that. And they may not consciously want it. It may be coming from a place of wounding or hardship, right? But we have to respect it. We have to respect everybody's journey and recognize that it's of service in some way. There's maybe something that they're gaining from that, some way that they're learning from that. Yeah. So the key is to recognize that this can happen, that you can be in a space where you are working with these energies and be among other people who are not working with them, and that will exist for some time. So that's the important thing to recognize. Let's see, many blessings can run concurrently. So lots of different expressions of the same reality can happen at the same time. Your own field may diverge from the person next to you. Feel this difference in the knowing that all persons are met equally with the opportunity to view themselves and their experience. So everyone has the chance to see themselves through this process, which is the goal, right? We're trying to see ourselves. See this not as injustice or inequality, but as a readiness to engage themselves in the context that they are in. So this is all with the understanding. They're talking about the future. This is not taking into account the constraints of our current reality, which is what they're going to address now. So, and they're saying inclusion in this paragraph. What my notes about this was that this is about inclusion will be a process. So getting to the place where everyone is met equally with the opportunity to express themselves, where we all have sort of this equal opportunity, that is something we're working toward. But right now they're saying inclusion will be a process. So here's how they say it. They say, we wish to move from the context of suffering, from lack, from subservience. So they're trying to get rid of those low lows that humanity experiences right now and bring us all to a better standard of living, really a better way of being in the world, where we have this equality, where we have, sort of the promise of the age of Aquarius is available to us, right? This sharing between us. They say, but in these times that are coming, this transfer of power from the few to the many is drawn out and lengthy. So they're saying we have to move through this. The unwinding of all these structures can't happen in a moment. It needs to be a process. Like, look at how long it's taken. This whole thing really started, I think, with COVID, in 2020. And here we are 2 years later, and lots has happened. And like, you could just look at things unraveling. If you say the thing we're looking for in our world is unraveling, and look how much is unraveled. In the last 2 years, the dollar is no longer the only standard by which oil is traded. Huge, unraveling, huge. And they talked about that, the hegemony, right? The power of the political influence of the U.S. gone out the window, right? Like we are losing it. And then look at the unraveling of the United States government. Like look at like what's going on with the Speaker of the House, and they can't make a single decision. Like it's nuts, right? That we can't agree on a budget. Like where they just keep extending, right? Like the government is unraveling. Like look at, like there's so many examples of unraveling that are going on everywhere. And that is what to spot. When you say, where is the progress? Watch the unraveling where things just don't seem to be functioning well anymore. That's what we're looking at. So, but it's drawn out, it's lengthy. The banking crisis, unraveling, right? There's so many things that are being drawn apart. There's a debt crisis on the horizon, more unraveling. Yeah. So, okay, drawn out and lengthy. It takes place, and this is interesting, it takes place in the surges of contraction and release. And the great earth tumult will aid thee. So this is, they're describing that it comes in waves, right? That it's like there'll be a thing, an event that's like, oh my gosh, this massive change, and then it releases. Contraction and then release, contraction and release. So we'll see it happening. It's almost like you push and we unravel a little bit more, and then we retract and gain momentum, and then push forward a little bit more, and then we retract. So that's kind of how we can expect to perceive this or to watch it happening. And not to mention like the war in the world, massive unraveling of peace agreements, unraveling like so many things, you guys, so many things. Okay. And then they say the great earth tumult. I'm sure they're talking about the earth rift there. The great earth tumult will aid thee. So this is going to be a major thing that then helps to take apart the institutions and the structures of our world that keep us in suffering, lack, and subservience. Right. And it doesn't mean that it's immediate. It's not like it happens and like, yay, everybody's happy. It's like, no, this has to happen. And things falling apart is there's hardship that comes with that. And we know that, but we will get through it. Right. And when we get through it, that's what's magical. When we get through to the other side, then we are coming at it from a different perspective. That's where the inclusion comes in. That's where we have the oneness, right? The unity that we're looking for. And then they go on to say there will be abundance, which I'm glad to hear. And they say there will be those mired in it who shall have and hold on to more than their share. So they say there will be abundance in the future, and there will still be those who keep too much of it for themselves, right? And then they say, we say the times that are coming will let loose the dialogues of understanding. I love this because they're here. I think they're talking about the ability, the deep empathy that we're all supposed to have a telepathic empathy that comes to us through this raising of our frequency where we truly feel each other's feelings. So that becomes the times that are coming, let loose the dialogues of understanding. So this is like a way that we really tune in and feel each other's feelings. And they say, where many shall come to partake. So in other words, there'll be some that have a lot, some that don't, those that don't. And they have talked about in the past that there might be a lot of mass migration. So imagine many people migrating. And this has already been happening. Actually, they talked about it and it's been happening. Mass migration has been occurring, but I think even more so. And that those many may come into areas of abundance, ready to partake. And they say, and they shall take on in their hardship a more endearing position. So in other words, but if we are in a place of telepathic empathy, we are feeling their hardship. If there is abundance, there is more openness, there's sharing, there's an ability to take people in, right? To help people, to help one another. So that's just a tiny sentence there that says a lot. Yeah. Then going on the next paragraph, this one says, even though conditions of, and this is my summary, that even though conditions of equality improve, there are still difficulties. So, still difficulties. And so this is how, or still differences. Yeah. So conditions improve, but there's still differences. That was how that's what this paragraph is about. They say the transfer has begun. The sensation of all are for each other, and all beget into one another a truth of no separation. And in this context, none shall remain in the hardship of suffering. So this is what we're trying to get into. This is part of this whole shift in frequency, is getting to a space where we really feel each other, right? That we care about the other person as much or more than we care, well, not more, but as much as we care about ourselves, right? That we feel that we are the same being. And because that's the truth of it, the truth of no separation, that we are one. Humanity is one consciousness. So, and in this context, none shall remain in the hardship of suffering. However, they say, stillness does calm the pulse of your own body, the context of your heart and its contents. So in other words, your experience may differ. You may be, if you are in stillness, that stillness may calm your heart, right? That the pulse of your own body may slow, right? The contents of your heart and your contents may feel peace. And you can be right next to somebody else who is not feeling that. So they're saying that your experience will differ. So, and thus, even while you carry one another through this journey, there is amongst yourselves differentiation. There is hardship in its distilled form, a sense of yourself as being encountered. So they're saying even after we've gone through all of this and we've got to a place where we do have this amazing empathy, where we do have unity, that there will still be a sense of differing experience, that there will still be an opportunity where you may be next to somebody and be in this place of calm and stillness, and they may not be. They may be in a place of agitation. And they're saying that there is amongst ourselves differentiation. There is hardship in its distilled form, which is such an interesting phrase. So what I got from that is that the hardship that we experience is drawn directly from our internal state, that it's not a reflection of society or cultural conditions or things like that are kind of the external constraining forces. It comes directly from the internal experience, right? From what's happening, from your feelings inside. And so it's a more of a direct manifestation, which I think is really interesting. So it's like what they said before about being freed from karma. So like an indirect form, maybe you are reliving some experience from a past life that you're trying to clear, as opposed to encountering another person and feeling in that person maybe wants something you don't want. So how do you respond to that? You're going to have feelings about that. And those feelings will have a direct interplay into your reality, right? And those things can still happen, they're saying, right? Then they go on to say a sense of yourself as being encountered, right? So they go on to say these variations amongst yourselves will be allowed as an expression of harmonious interplay, of understanding within friendship with yourself, right? It is a conversation that has been lacking and often misunderstood. So this is the idea that in the future, we can still have disagreement, right? We can still have two people who want things that are at odds, and that can happen. And that will create certain feelings, and we will be then creating from those experiences and learning about our reality and learning about ourselves. How do we respond when I want something and that person wants something different, right? How do we feel? You could still have heartbreak, right? You could still want to be in a relationship with someone and the other person doesn't want it. So that's heartbreak, right? And so in this context, we can still have that and encounter ourselves and feel those feelings. So they're saying that and when we do that, it is hardship in its distilled form. It's a reflection of what's really deep inside of us, and it brings it forward and allows us. It's a friendship with ourself, which is such a super cool way of expressing it. The variations amongst yourselves will be allowed as an expression of harmonious interplay. It is the harmony between yourself and your reality, an interplay between you and your reality, and of an understanding within friendship with yourself. So it's like that willingness to encounter yourself, the willingness to dialogue with yourself in your reality, to see yourself. Yeah, it is a conversation that has been lacking and often misunderstood. So it's this conversation of how do we manifest all this stuff. Seeing it in this way has been lacking and often misunderstood. And here you have unfolding a greater dialogue and opportunity to be as one with each other in the unfoldment of humanity's graceful expression on earth. So this is it. This is that idea. This is what we're heading towards, a graceful expression, as opposed to the karmic expression, the very ungraceful. It's like the belly flop expression of humanity on earth is what we've been in. And we're moving towards this really lovely swan dive, right, expression on earth. So much cooler. Wow, you guys. I know that was a cool message. You're saying unraveling is a great way to discuss it. That is awesome. Unraveling doesn't create the same kind of triggers. Yeah, true. Earthquake in Iceland. Yeah, there's craziness happening in Iceland right now. I've seen those pictures of like it's splitting and stuff like that going on. Tons of volcanic eruptions too, which is definitely this Mars Uranus stuff that's going on. A lot of volcanic stuff. And like we all become empaths. Yeah, so that's, I think, where we're headed. Awesome. You're very welcome, Mike. Thanks, belly flop. What to even say? Thank you, grateful, humbled. Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. All right, you guys. Amazing, amazing conversation today. I absolutely loved it. I believe we have peace bathing this weekend. So those of you who are in peace bathing, do not miss it. We will be meeting Sunday at 10 a.m. For peace bathing, which is our monthly beautiful healing to help us integrate and move with these energies that we are moving through. So if you would like, if you don't yet have your own process or practice for regular healing and you would like to join us, it's not too late. You can join us. It's on my website, anntucker.com, and it's called Peace Bathing. Have a beautiful day. Sending you lots of love, and I will see you next Friday live.